Okay, opening it up.
Yeah.
There we go.
Webinar started. Okay. Okay. I just want to see how many people we've got. A few people joining us. Just wanted, hi, my name is David Charles. I'm the communications manager here at the GCP. I apologise for we're starting this seminar a few minutes late, but we've had a few technical problems. So I'm just waiting while people are joining, and then we will start. I'll do the introductions and everything. So I'm very sorry for the 3 or 4 minute delay. As I say, we just had a few technical problems. We've all had to Google Zoom, how you turn something on. Collectively, between all of us, we didn't know. So apologies for that. Okay, so I can see we've got people joining. Right, okay, so let me start an introduction. Well, welcome to this webinar, which is part of the engagement that we are undertaking as a GCP on the Melbourne Greenway. This is one of 3 sort of events that we're running. The others are a couple of in-person events, which we will talk about at the end in terms of details. This is a Zoom webinar. It will be recorded as normal. We've got a presentation from the project team that we'll be able to run through, and there'll be opportunity to ask questions at the end. Just to say, I think we're all quite familiar with Zooms now, but if you've got questions, there's 2 ways you can raise a question. You can either put it in the chat function, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question. Please, we prefer people to ask questions, so please don't be shy. And we've got a number of people here from the project team that I'll just introduce. Chris Hart, and Russell Howells, and Peter Krauser have joined us from the team. We've also got Yusuf, who's our technical person, who's on chance, and Molly and myself are from the comms team at GCP. As just remind everybody that sort of normal rules of engagement apply, and that I would ask everyone to be respectful and courteous during the meeting, and and polite, and we can all have a good and informed session. It's now about 6 o'clock. I hope that we'll finish by about 7:30. And we can run through things. So I don't see any questions on the opening session, so I'm going to hand over to Chris if you want to introduce yourself and start to do the first bit of the presentation, Chris.
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, no, thank you. My name's Chris Hart. I'm the GCP project manager for the Melbourne Greenway project. So yeah, thank you very much for coming along this evening to hear about what we're proposing in terms of the route improvements for the Melbourne route. So we're gonna sort of split the session into a couple of parts. So the first part, I'm going to give a bit of an introduction to the kind of the Greenways overall, just give a bit of a sort of a sense of what our broader sort of ambition is looking like, and then obviously we'll dive into the detail of kind of what we're proposing, kind of what kind of issues and opportunities we've got along the Melbourne route, and kind of our proposed designs, which our sort of lead designer Peter Crowther will kind of walk through. So that's and then we'll sort of have the sort of Q&A session at the end, as David said. So yeah, that's a broad plan of action. So I'm going to just kick off just to give a few slides sort of summarizing kind of our kind of overview of the Greenways program, for those of you in particular that maybe not familiar with kind of what we're doing. So yeah, what are Greenways? So they are new and or improved walking and cycling routes, and where we can and where appropriate, we'll also improve kind of equestrian routes, equestrian provision along the routes. We'll be making use of of kind of off-road paths, quiet streets, and then kind of improving provision on street as well. So making kind of improvements there. So really probably kind of once we deliver the whole network, it's not going to all look the same. It's going to be in different environments. So a bit of off-road, bit of on highway, bit of kind of on quiet streets. So a bit of a mix of kind of improvements. But the aim is really to sort of enable more people to reach more of Greater Cambridgeshire more easily, safer, and obviously more directly. And obviously, our ambition is to, really, make active travel, walking and cycling that kind of mode of choice, really across Cambridgeshire. And once it's all delivered, the network will make it easier to travel in a pleasant and sustainable way into and out of Cambridge, and obviously also be able to enjoy the kind of countryside for kind of leisure purposes. So, as well as the sort of commuting routes, will also be able to sort of improve the journey provision for access to schools, services, hospitals, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, as I was saying, so some of the routes will be totally new. So we might be creating routes sort of through private land, but some of the sections might be kind of within the existing highway network, and also making use of kind of existing public rights of way and sort of improving those. But yeah, obviously our ambition is to sort of deliver that rather extensive network of 150 kilometres of active travel provision, as shown on that diagram. I think it's sometimes worth just taking a quick step back. Why are we doing all this? So the Greater Cambridge Partnership is investing to ensure we can support the sustainable economic growth and improve the quality of life for everyone in our kind of area. And obviously we're doing that through kind of a series of ambitious projects and programs. And obviously, the Greenways program is kind of one of those programs. We're a thriving centre for kind of education, high-tech business and healthcare, but so there are a lot of positives, but there are a number of kind of transport challenges and issues that we our area suffers from, and we want to kind of make we want to improve improve that, or we want to make that better. So some of the key issues we're trying to address through this program, this Greenways program. So part of it is trying to tackle the growth in traffic and congestion by giving people a fantastic alternative, particularly for those kind of shorter trips. In some areas we've got limited public transport choices, and in some areas we've got limitations on kind of cycling provision and walking provision at the moment. So we want to kind of improve all of that. Obviously, the negative impacts of congestion kind of result in kind of air pollution and high carbon emissions. So yes, there's a whole bunch of reasons why we want to sort of deliver the Greenways program. So we've set out a number of objectives there to sort of which kind of frame the Greenways program. So providing better cycling and walking routes, enhancing public spaces, reducing the impact of traffic congestions and growing traffic levels, as well as kind of improving access to jobs, opportunities, and reducing air pollution and improving health. But yeah, really all about trying to normalise kind of active travel as a mode of choice, as I said previously. So we've got 12 greenways that we're looking to deliver. So they connect, kind of effectively connect Cambridge with the surrounding settlements and villages around the city centre. So it's around 150 kilometres of network. And we'll be connecting in with kind of other projects that are in development and other existing schemes that are already there to provide almost like a seamless connectivity by active travel. And it's really important that the routes we design will be fully accessible to people with mobility issues. It's really important that we kind of open up kind of green space to people, so we're not sort of creating barriers for doing so. I mean, it's also really important that we improve safety as part of this program as well. And obviously some of the routes parts of the routes we're proposing kind of on-road provision, so we'll need to improve kind of safety provision there, so including like traffic calming, safer crossing points and the like. That's probably almost like the do minimum really, in terms of the ambition. And yeah, I mean, it's a massive network, although much of the network is kind of within the highway boundary. There are parts of the alignment which run through private land, through public rights of way, through floodplain, through conservation areas, which means that basically the designs we come up with need to be kind of sensitive to all of that. So yeah, it's a challenge to deliver, but we will get there. Yeah, this slide just sort of shows almost a bit of a summary of kind of a bit of a timeline of the Greenways program. I'll probably just jump to the sort of 2018-19 area, so where we undertook public consultation of a number of the Greenway routes, which set out, so we engaged on specific alignments. The GCP Executive Board kind of approved, it gave us approval to proceed to the kind of design and implementation stage during 2020 for those routes. And then in 2021, we appointed design consultants from Atkins and WSP to basically help us design and deliver through the various stages of design for the Greenways program. We also have a term contractor that we're working with. Obviously, we've got a lot of network to ultimately deliver, so we want to have kind of early discussions with our contractor to make sure we can deliver things on the ground. So kind of Atkins and WSP in particular have been sort of looking at the concept design. So that's really kind of examined all those routes that were engaged on in the previous kind of public consultation. To really kind of home in on kind of key opportunities and challenges that we might face. So we're kind of at the stage where we almost have a rolling program of concept design delivery for each of the individual 12 Greenways, and then we're kind of rolling out a program of kind of engagement. So part of that is with kind of key stakeholders. So some of you may or may not have been involved in some of that, whether you're a parish councillor or part of sort of NMU groups, but we're also doing public engagement, which is obviously this is kind of part of it, and the purpose of all that engagement really is to kind of mop up all of the kind of comments and comments we have from that kind of broad group, just to help us inform ultimately what our design will be. And the next stage of the design will be the preliminary design, so that will take into account all of those kind of comments, and then obviously as part of that, Atkins and WSP will be doing a lot of technical assessments to help inform those designs as well, whether it's topographical surveys, environmental assessments, drainage designs, cost estimations and the like. So that's a bit of an overview of kind of what we're doing at the moment. In terms of looking forward to 2023, I know we took this to exec board, but we've set out an outlined delivery plan for 2023 onwards. So we're looking to start certainly implementing some of the kind of early works in 2023 where we can, and some of the more challenging and complex sections we'll deliver in 2024 and 2025. In terms of in terms of the Melbourne public engagement, obviously, thank you for coming along. I know we're going to come on to the interesting bit in terms of what we're proposing in terms of our design, but just a bit of a plug in terms of what we're doing for more broadly for public engagement. So we've got a couple of in-person events next week. So if you want to attend in person, have a chat to one of the team sort of in person, you can do that. So we've got a session at the Melbourne Hub on the 17th of October, and also the Hawkston Centre on the 20th, and obviously our engagement materials are also available online, and you can complete a survey if you want to kind of provide additional formal feedback, and that kind of closes on the that closes at midday on the 28th of October. So that's a bit of an overview of the sort of Greenways program. I suppose I just before we kind of go on to the detail, I just want to check if there's any kind of questions on the sort of context before we kind of move on.
No, I don't see, there's been a question in the chat, any questions, but that's been answered, thanks.
Okay.
But I don't see anyone's hands up, and I've got nothing in the chat there, Chris, so thanks.
Okay, in which case I will hand over to Peter Crowther from Atkins, who's our lead designer for the Melbourne Greenway, just to talk through our proposals.
Good evening, everyone. Peter Crowther here from Atkins, the project lead for the Melbourne Greenway. Obviously, this slide here is probably just a reiteration of some of the things that Chris had mentioned earlier, but generally the Melbourne Greenway is one of the 12 schemes that are proposed, enabling or allowing connection of villages in and around the A10 corridor, and hopefully sort of allow for those gaps that are perceived within that corridor in connectivity to those villages along that route. It's approximately 12.5 kilometres long in total, or effective length of combined routes in that section. And as you'll see from the plan that we'll put up later, it passes from the northern end, sort of like at the southernmost end of Trumpington Meadows, down through Hawkeston, Harston, down to Foxton, Melbourne, and then on to Royston, but also has connections with Shepworth and also Meldreth. If you go on to the next screen, please, Chris. So as you can see here, that's just a visualization of the route that I've just mentioned. Historically, the route was sort of broken down into a number of sections, and previously had included sections for this, as you see at the top end there, for Southwest Travel Hub, and also in the middle, it's not shown in there, but the Foxton Travel Hub. Those two proposed schemes are now being implemented separately to this scheme, so no longer included with this scope or element of works, but obviously we are collaboratively working and coordinating with those projects as and when they sort of get up and running and move forward with regards to a coordinated approach. So as you see here, the section here is broken down into 8 sections. Hopefully you can all see that it's a little bit small, but I have larger scale plans that I can bring up later on. But generally, I'll just give you an overview of what's going on and some of those key issues, concerns. But as I say, this first slide shows the proposed or the proposals along that corridor. So the first section is the A10 north of Harston, and that is effectively from the connection with the Trumpington Meadows, or the bridge over the River Cam at the northern end, and that sort of heads south and then connects at the top end of the northern end of the village of Hawkeston to the existing infrastructure that's already there. Section 2 is an offline route that connects in with the Haslingfield Greenway, or the proposed Haslingfield Greenway. The proposed Haslingfield Greenway is an enhancement or an upgrade to the existing bridleway that's currently there, allowing it for use by others. The route from Haslingfield Greenway then extends down and connects in with the village of Harston. It's probably also mentioning that these are sort of sections along the A10 corridor, but anything we're doing is not detracting or removing or reducing that existing provision that's already on the A10. So with regards to that section 1, that's actually enhancing that section. So what we're doing, as I said before, is connecting or creating connections to those villages. So as I said, section 2 is the Harston off-road path. Section 3 is the section through Foxton Village. That is effectively the junction from the, again, A10 down through the village and looping, as I say, just creates that connection for those residents that are living in with Foxton back to the A10 main corridor. Section 4 is the Shepworth link. This is a link that connects A10 out to the village of Shepworth and also Shepworth railway station. Section 5 further down is Melbourne Village. Again, this is utilising existing connectivity that runs from the A10 down to the eastern end of Melbourne, but then creates new provision through the village of Melbourne and out its sort of western end, connecting back with the A10. Section 6 is the Meldreth links. This includes an on-road link to Meldreth village, but also an offline link that creates direct connectivity with Meldreth station. I appreciate I'm rattling through these, but I will give a greater explanation as we move on to the next slides. Section 7 is then the connection sort of from the sort of western end or the western end of Melbourne down back along the A10 corridor, so creating new provision along this section. There is already some provision, but on the sort of northwest side, this looks to put new provision on the southeastern side as you look at the plan of the A10 corridor down to the edge of Royston, and section 8 is a new bridge or proposed new bridge structure over the A505, creating connectivity with Royston. So that gives you just a general feel of where we're doing work or where we're proposing to do work. If you drop onto the next slide for me, this plan here shows that it's quite difficult to see, but you can see within there, this is lifted from the definitive maps for Cambridgeshire and shows the extent of existing public right-of-ways within the vicinity, and how this can create better connectivity with those adjoining routes and so on and so forth. So yes, it's to enhance and to provide better connectivity throughout its length of the A10 corridor. As you can see, that there's quite a number of proliferation of public rights of way along that corridor. Next slide, please. So obviously, I'm now sort of going to just go into a little bit more detail on each of those sections. Just move this off my screen. So section 1, A10 north of Harston. Again, these are just atypical shots along the route. The image there is looking north, just below where the River Cam is, and obviously from that picture, you and those that are local to the area or users of this route will know that there's inconsistent widths. There's quite a pinch point at that location there, and makes it difficult for people to pass one another, and so therefore increases the risk of conflict for users on the path. It also sort of heading south from here, that there's poor connectivity across the road to new and existing residential developments and properties, and also there's, as we all know, high traffic flows on the A10, including high levels of HGVs. So it can be quite an intimidating environment for pedestrians, cyclists, and equestrians along this particular corridor. So what are we planning to do, or what are we going to try and do for there? So obviously we need to address some of those points above. And one way that we can do that is to try and increase the width of that shared use path as you see it there. We can do that by reallocation of road space, and that means just taking some of that highway corridor, some of the width of that highway corridor, and sort of pay it back to the shared use path. Obviously, this is a sort of a road of some width. Obviously, it has some historical use for being a higher speed road in the past, and therefore some of those hatchings and road markings are reminiscent of that. So I think there's a good opportunity there just to reduce the overall width, and again reduce the speed of that road. But take into account that obviously that's a tight bend, and obviously has a previous history of accidents in that location. So we'll need to undertake all the due diligence associated with highway design and engineering that location. Obviously, as the route heads south, it's probably, you can drop onto the next slides actually, and I'll run through the proposals as we go. And again, with these, appreciate these are probably a little bit small to look at, but I do have larger plans. So probably if I run through these plans, we go through and take some questions at the end, I can then show a little bit more detail, explain a little bit better on some larger scale plans that I have here also that we can zoom in and out of. So as you can see here, the route follows the western side of the A10 corridor, increases the width to make a consistent sort of 3 metre wide shared use path, and also creating an offset from the carriageway to improve user comfort. Obviously, at the bottom of the screen there, if you can see it, there's a signal control junction. Obviously, we're looking to improve crossing provision at that junction, try and make it safer, but also where side roads cross the route or the active travel corridor, where safe to do so, we will also provide priority for the active travel users, i.e. vehicles will have to give way to those using the active travel path. If you can move on to the next slide, please. And again, as you can see here, just continuing with the same above, heading south along the A10 corridor with all the proposed improvements on the western side. And again, here creating better connectivity with the road on the right hand side, Church Road, and obviously that leads on and also is another route into the new residential area there, so creating better connectivity with that residential site there. Where the cursor on the screen is just, oh, it's moved now, sorry, it then creates connection with the Haslingfield Greenway just a little bit above that pointer. And there's a new crossing provision, so it creates connectivity or the design lines from Church Road through to the Haslingfield Greenway. Obviously, this section then continues further south along the A10 corridor, heading south until it reaches, sorry, I'm just got, oh, sorry, apologies, reaches London Road. And it there at that which point it connects into the existing provision on the shared use path on the western side, heading down through Hawkston and on to Hartston. So that's section 1. David, just to check, we're just going to run through these and take questions at the end, are we? Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I saw your head nod.
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay. So section 2 is the path west of Hartston. This is the parallel routes, the new offline routes. This is currently the issues and opportunities here. This is currently crosses private land. So obviously we'll need to have landowner agreement to do any additional work in this location. It's worth noting that currently this section or part of this section is a permissive public right of way. And yep, so obviously that currently forms part of a high-level stewardship scheme. So again, something to take into account as we develop, but obviously forms part of the existing sort of public right-of-way network. We also need to be a little bit careful in these locations because obviously being more rural, there's more potential for environmental and ecological impact. So again, due diligence and care. Also things associated with harvesting in this case, and possibly further south livestock. So there's the interaction with the logistics and operations of the farms as well to take into account as well. Putting all that to one side, the intention is to create a new link along this corridor adjacent to the hedgerow running south. Probably if you can drop onto the next plan. Thank you. So as you can see, that connects with the Haslingfield Greenway on the northern end and follows the hedgerow heading south. Obviously maintaining the existing provision there that's a permissive bridle way, but also creating a more durable path alongside for cycling and or walking, albeit the walking can also occur on the softer grass verge as well. If you carry on to the next screen, as you can see, it just continues south. Just about 2/3 or just beyond halfway down there, the existing public right-of-way sort of swings off to the west. So the section south of this is actually going to be new. And obviously we need to talk to the landowners and gain agreement for the permissions to be able to create that. But again, it follows the hedgerows down through all the way down through and connecting in with Button End Lane at the bottom end. Again, we're having discussions at that southern end there with regards to the actual route, but obviously this is the current one shown on the plan. There may be an opportunity to move it across onto the existing highway or road that sits there on the western side of the allotments that are currently there. It also, as you can see in the middle of the plan, provides a new connection with the existing public right-of-way as a sort of T shape. Sorry, I haven't got my pointer. Just there. Thank you. So it creates a connection there. So generally, with regards to these, yeah. So sorry. This is effectively that section for section 2. Section 3, Foxton Village. This is the section that runs through Foxton Village. Obviously, the issues and opportunities in this location is that it's of local character, and the widths and of the existing highways and footways do limit opportunities for significant improvement. But again, with these sort of local characters, it's probably best to although to try and minimise the impact on that sort of setting. But known issues are things such as traffic speeds and multiple access points across footways to private drives and garages and so on and so forth. If you go on to the next screen, please, and I'll run through the proposal. So with regards to the sort of village settings, what we're proposing to do, and it's sort of a consistent approach for a number of the village settings, is to try and reduce traffic speeds by speed reductions. So if not already, then looking to reduce those to a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit or speed zone through Foxton Village. Look at reducing or introducing traffic calming, the sort of the typical would be speed humps or bumps to reduce that, tightening up of radii, and providing level surfaces for footways across side roads and so on and so forth. So I suppose you could use the term low key, but generally just in keeping with the local character, with the intention to just generally calm the speeds in that area and raise awareness and perception of other users, non-motorized users using that route and that alignment. So if you can go on to the next plan, please. And again, it just sort of continues down through the village of Foxton, heading sort of in that southwesterly direction to the extent of the residential dwellings. Obviously, at that point there, as there is no more sort of residential dwellings, the speed existing increases, and so probably be hard to create a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit or get people to maintain a 20-mile speed limit beyond the extent of that village. So, but however, we would look to keep that or provide a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit from that point down onto down towards the A10. Next slide, please. Obviously, with the slightly higher speeds, we'd look at slightly different traffic calming measures, and these could be gateway features or give way to sort of oncoming traffic. The usual sort of fare that you see around many of the villages on gateway features in and out of villages throughout Cambridgeshire. The route then follows the alignment of the road through until it reaches the A10. It's probably also worth mentioning that for this section, it's proposed that obviously the active travel users will be on highway. Obviously pedestrians will be on footway where the footway is existing, but generally keeping those traffic speeds down for users to be on the highway. Where we connect in with the A10, obviously the existing infrastructure is on the other side of the road, so we're looking to introduce a new crossing provision in that location for all users. That allows connectivity with the public right-of-way on the opposite, but also connection with the shared use path on the western side. And then obviously when joining, members of the public can then head north or south, whichever way they choose. Next slide, please. This is the link to Shepperth, section 4. Again, similar to Foxton Village. Again, local character, widths of the highway, limit opportunities for signal improvement. One thing to note is that at the junction with the A10, there is limited visibility there, so that will influence the design. Obviously, on the concept designs, as you'll see in a minute, it's showing a proposed priority for non-motorized users at that junction. That's the intention, but obviously we need to make sure that that's safe, and we need to go away and look at that junction specifically. Also worth noting that we're getting traffic counts and speed counts just to substantiate any proposals that we may take forward or understand those issues going forward. But generally, we need to understand that junction a little bit better to come up with a final solution, so that may develop or change as we go forward, just to make people aware of that. However, the link to Shepperth itself, very similar to Foxton Village, just trying to keep those speed limits down once we're in that road, trying to get it down at 20 mile an hour. But again, because of the character and nature of this first section, and enforcement may result to be about 30 mile an hour. But again, just generally trying to reduce the speeds in this section by means of traffic calming and associated traffic measures. If you move on to the next screen. So obviously you can see in the bottom right there, you can see the proposed interaction with the A10. But again, it's one, I think this is just one to be wary of, and it's probably one of the more difficult junctions along this entire route to work with. But we will get there. We just need to make sure we take everything into consideration, and obviously take into account any comments through engagement, and again, meetings with local residents, on and so forth. It is really helpful to form or to create that informed decision. But as you see there, the route is generally traffic calming throughout as it heads on towards the village centre. Again, in this section here, we were trying to work out how we may improve that. Obviously, it's quite constrained, that section where it crosses the River Shep. And obviously it's very narrow. So again, in those sort of locations, site visibility is very limited. So again, based on sort of low traffic flows, but not discounting risks associated with safety and so on and so forth, it's probably, we've kind of come to the decision it's probably not worth introducing priority or give way to oncoming traffic in that location, or traffic signals. It's just to try and reinforce what's going on there by surface treatments or road markings and so on and so forth in that location. But again, it's a very narrow point, and one that needs to be carefully considered. Once we get up to the railway station, again, looking to improve connectivity, so providing a crossing at that location, probably be an informal crossing, drop curbs, so on and so forth, as opposed to a traffic signal control junction, but generally improving connectivity with the station in that location. Next one. Melbourne Village Centre, again, not too dissimilar to Shepworth and Foxton. However, given that there's high levels of traffic, it's a little bit more densely populated. We would look to probably do, we were looking to do a little bit more with regards to measures. So again, similarly with this, local character, width of highway limit opportunities in certain locations. There are multiple access points from drives and side roads. It's a busy local village centre. Once you get into the centre, there's quite a high curbside activity with regards to servicing and parking. And again, sometimes the traffic speeds are in excess of the posted limit. If you sort of go on to the plans for me, please. So obviously at the sort of northeastern end, just up by the number 12, is where the existing active travel corridor or non-motorised use path, shared use path, enters into the village. Obviously at this location it starts to narrow a little bit, so we'd look to try and maintain a consistent width into the village. Obviously we're looking at reducing the speed limits on entry to the village again, as we have with the other villages, and obviously continue that shared use path on the northern side of the footway as it sort of heads into the village. However, at the entrance to the campus there, or the science park, the road width does narrow overall, and as such we'd have to revert to an on-road solution. So again, creation of those sort of speed reduction features, traffic calming measures, curb radii reductions, highlighting the junctions by coloured surfacing and road markings throughout. The other thing with Melbourne as well is because of the nature and character, we're also proposing to introduce further crossings from footway to footway, so new pedestrian crossings throughout that corridor to improve accessibility and permeability from one side of the road to the other. Again, on there also, as you can see, create at the junction to Science Park, creating priority for users of that path. And it's also worth mentioning that we are, or we have been discussing with stakeholders, of which the science park is one of them. Go on, next slide then, please. So heading in a southwesterly direction, the route continues through the village. It comes to the main signal control junction with the High Street, and heading off, sorry, Station Road, I believe it is, and heading off towards Meldreth. We're looking to provide an improved junction arrange there by reducing the overall crossing widths, again improving permeability and accessibility. So in effect, the sort of southbound traffic lanes, there's currently two. There's a straight ahead and a right turn. So what we're currently proposing is to reduce that down to a single lane to reduce the overall impact of improve the crossing provision across that space and improve the urban realm in that space as well. With a lot of these, again, as I said, these are the proposals, but they need to be substantiated with sort of traffic modelling and traffic speeds. They're currently being undertaken, so you may see traffic counts going on in and around the local area as a number for all these schemes. But obviously, once we receive that data, we can then understand how that junction will work based on these proposals. And obviously, if we need to make changes because of that data, then obviously we will do that. But the general aspiration in that location is to improve the sort of accessibility and permeability across that junction, not only for pedestrians, but also for cyclists and other users that want to turn right and heads towards Meldreth or pass through that junction there. This route then continues south now. If you follow, if I get this right, number 14 heads further south, heading down out through the village, again continuing much as the same as earlier on within the route and the alignment. Again, just general traffic calming, speed reduction features. Again, next slide please. At this point where it sort of heads or leaves the village centre or the residential, again, because there's a wider verge or the creation of more space, we can now go to an off or utilise the verge space on the southern side of that road, and therefore we just need to get all the users onto that space. So there's a configuration there, getting people from either side of the road back onto the single side and vice versa, depending on the direction you're coming from. So that route will then continue as a off-road shared use path to the south of the highway. Obviously, we look to reduce the speeds to that section, but obviously because it's now off-road, then obviously that will no longer be a 20 mile, it'll be a 30 or 40 mile an hour section through there. But again, creating the appropriate distance or offset from the highway in that location to give those levels of comfort. It's a wide verge there. It's a shared use path. So again, beyond or to the south of that shared use path, there'd still be a wide verge so that can be used for equestrian use and or dog walkers, so that sort of existing provision will be retained along there. If you go on to the next one now. So the Meldreth link is kind of broken into two sections, but it was just called the Meldreth link for the purpose of this. So effectively, it's the village link, i.e. the one that follows the road, both sort of Station Road from Melbourne Centre and then Station Road. Just between everybody here, this is one of those issues where everything seems to be called Station Road in this location, so it's hard to differentiate between which one I'm talking about. But effectively, the Station Road, it comes from Melbourne Village Centre, heads up to a T-junction, and then sort of turns left and runs around. It then runs under the A10 and then up over the railway line and back down to join with the railway station. So that's for the purpose of this, we're just calling this the village link, and that again, like with most of these, it's just going to be that light touch approach. Users will be in the highway, but obviously we're trying to reduce speeds through traffic calming and speed reduction and reductions of radii, traffic signs and road markings, just generally to try and calm the whole area in there. Again, it's of local character and multiple access points, so we just need that consistent design approach as proposed throughout the other section of the Melbourne Village. The other section, as you can see on here, is the station link. This is the footway that sort of commences from the junction of where Station Road is a T junction, heads out underneath the A10 and through the field to the southern side of Meldreth Station. So this is one we're referring to as the station link. Obviously has a history of antisocial behaviour, and unfortunately accounts of assault and everywhere. So again, significant issues associated with personal safety using this route. So obviously, we just, anything we need to do here needs to be very sensitive and considerate of those users sort of taking it forward. So as you can see in this image here, this is looking north through that existing subway, and then that little dot at the end is the light at the end of the tunnel, shall we say. So obviously there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of vegetation, so a significant a part of this section will be to ensure that those site visibilities are maintained, that it's clear and it's open, but without, you know, we need to be careful of what we've removed, but we're just trying to improve that environment and make it safer. One of the other things we can do is you know, try and make that subway lighter and brighter with surfaces and materials. Also ensure that any lighting through there is suitable and appropriate. But again, yeah, just making sure. So some careful thought about how we're going to make that safer. But generally, that is one of the links that has now been brought into the scope to consider. If you want to go on to the next section. So yeah, so as you can see it there, you can see the straight green line, which is the link. That section there will be just an improvement to the existing shared use path by increasing the width and creating connectivity with that station there. Obviously, some of you will probably be aware that there's proposals to improve that station and access to that station by trying to provide ramps onto the platform, or the southern platform, or the London-bound platform, and improve connectivity to the stairs that go up and over the railway line. But also, we're also improving the highway link as well by sort of speed reduction and traffic calming through that section there. If you want to move on to the next section. So A10 Royston Road, this section is basically ties onto the bottom of the Melbourne Village Link. It connects onto the A10 here and heads south down towards Royston. Just touching on the fact that why we're proposing to go on this side rather than the other side, where there is existing infrastructure in part for existing provision in part, primarily because you know, we're coming out on this side of the road, and the proposed structure or bridge across across the A505 is on the eastern side of the roundabout as opposed to the western side of the roundabout. The reason it's on the eastern side is because there's engineering difficulties, there's utilities, and a number of issues associated with the western side. So obviously it's more logical to create a direct link, other than trying to provide two crossing points across a very busy high-speed road at this point and further down, which is probably hidden by the crest of the curve as you approach the roundabout of the Royston. So just a bit of rationale to why we're sort of looking at, or we're proposing it to be on this side. Also, there's a wide verge here, so again, providing appropriate levels of offset, 2.5 meters, to improve that you know, just to improve the offset in that location. Introduction of a minimum 3 meter wide shared use path, which will just extend all the way down. Probably if you go onto the plans, probably easier. And again, continuing along that route, obviously creating priority across any side roads and entries. As you can see there, one of the things we had looked at was access along that little section or link. But again, we're looking at that as a possibility, or as an addition to that route, but subject to the status of that road there. Also, there's potential opportunities sort of going forward to create connectivity with the public right-of-way on the western side of the A10, just to the north of that junction as well. So that's something that we'll be looking at, or has been raised during earlier stakeholder engagement. So again, that's something that we'll be looking at and taking forward. So again, heading further south, it just continues down across. There are a couple of pinch points where it gets a little bit narrow, and obviously we'll need to understand what solution will be there. So obviously it's potentially looking at a little bit of land take from the landowner in that location. Again, we've spoken to the landowner or their agent, and that seems to be an acceptable way forward with them. Or perhaps if it's a shorter length, perhaps a reduced width over that section. But again, it's only a very short section. But again, just gives an indication of some of the issues, concerns, or some of the issues along the route. If you go to the next slide, and probably the next one actually, because it probably gives you a more overall picture. If you next slide. Oh no, sorry, that was the last one, was it? Okay, sorry, that's the one. Sorry, yeah, 20. So as you can see there, it sort of heads along the A10 corridor, and as we sort of get to those that know, it will be that sort of brow of the hill, shall we say, where it then drops down to the roundabout. We'll look to sort of turn left, head through into that field that's there. And again, we've spoken to the landowner there. They're quite positive with regards to the proposals. We'll follow the field boundary along that route with a sort of new shared use path, or in this case it is showing a segregated path, creating a new link to where the structure will be across the A505. As I said before, the location there is just shown as a guide. It may be further east, it might be slightly further west, but generally what we're trying to do is connect in to a sensible location on the southern side, and also the existing network and paths that go around that residential site in that location. If you go on to the next slide.
Yeah, it's just worth adding that we know Hertfordshire are sort of consulting at the moment on their local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which we know kind of shows that connection across the link here. So yeah, see, we cross the boundary here between Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire.
Oh, was there one with the bridge? That's it. So again, just talking about the A505 crossing. The little image there is a typical bridge. It's not what we're proposing that location. And as you can, the more eagle-eyed view says the A2, so it's just showing an example of an active travel crossing. The section at the bottom is from that location, and sort of just gives an idea. That's not to say that that's what the bridge is going to look like, but it just gives an idea of what it could be, and to sort of take that forward and provide costings, so on and so forth. So that does create that connectivity and link with Royston, creating, just improves connectivity throughout. And as Chris said, it is into Hertfordshire, and we are talking to Hertfordshire with regards to sort of developing that idea and concept and taking that forward. So yeah, so that's probably rambled on a bit there, but yeah, probably usually have a bit more interaction as we go along, but happy to take
Thanks, Peter.
questions. But yeah.
Okay, so now we move on to the question section. There's a couple of set questions here. Hey, David Planks, you've been asking questions in the question answer about the scope of the project, and I think we've addressed all those, so I'm not going to raise those here. But you did have another question. Yeah, so a question here, Peter and Chris, which is in the A10 section, Hawkston maps sheets 1 to 3 includes references to consider removal of safety barriers to increase availability width for shared use path, and consider removal of guardrails to improve available width for shared use path. Will this not reduce safety for pedestrians? That's the question there, Peter and Chris.
Okay, so obviously the existing guardrails there, you could assume that they're there for a reason, and they're probably there for a good reason, shall we say. Obviously these are sort of concept designs. Obviously with regards to the guardrail there and that raised curb height, as I said before, being local, I knew that road was of a faster speed, but also there's a structure behind. So as part of the work going forward, we need to try and understand what the purposes of that, as you can see in that picture there, what that double curb is. Is it protecting the structure, or is it just because there was incidents of vehicles coming off the road at high speed in that location, and that was the mitigation? So that's something we need to find out. If we can remove them because it's safe to do so, then we will. So that's a very short answer, but I think in sort of wider context, to create that more openness and an open feeling with regards to people using that space, and removes the risk of handlebars clipping structures and so on and so forth. But yeah, it is a valid point, and we need to understand why they were put there in the first place. But we're hoping to mitigate that against A, understanding that, but B, also because we're looking to reduce the speeds and trying to change the perception of that space with regards to the movement of traffic on that road. But obviously there are other ways that, that we can create that protection if it needs to retain without the use of those guardrails and things like that. Obviously, where the guardrails, I think further up at the back of the highway, it's probably because there's a big slope or ditch to the rear of it as well. So again, I think going forward, we need to, they're there for a reason, that they have a purpose, and we're not to just, should we say, just remove them without that sort of due consideration. So that will be part of that design process to make sure that we're not creating another issue or hazard going forward.
Just to add that sort of during each stage of design, there'll be sort of road safety audits undertaken. So there'll be a road safety audit done of the sort of each stage of the design, and also once it gets implemented as well. So if anything does fall through the cracks, which I don't think it will, because Peter's a great engineer, we'll have that sort of challenge as well. So
Okay, thanks, guys. I've got two more questions, but David Plank's put his hand up and he wants to speak, so I'm going to allow him to talk and ask his question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the answer, which I understand and appreciate. Just the context for that is that one of the things that the Trumpington Residents Association objected to in the Cycling Plus proposals was this very kind of measure. Now, there may be good reason for it in these locations, although walking those areas fairly regularly, I'm not sure that I see them, but we're pleased that there will be further assessment of these proposals in order to ensure, well, particularly pedestrian safety, which may well be the reason why they were originally included. So thank you.
That's okay, no problem.
Okay, thanks, David. Thanks for your question or comment. Thanks. I'm going to move on then to, I've got a question here, which is in section 4, linked to Shepworth. Will the existing pedestrian path from the A10 most of the way to Shepworth Watermill be widened to a multi-use path? Does that make sense? So in section 4, the link to Shepworth. Yeah. Yep. The existing pedestrian path on the A10 most of the way to Shepworth Watermill, will it be widened to be a multi-use path?
Currently, unless I've mentioned them in passing on this element here, we're not proposing to do any improvements to that infrastructure. So that the points just so that the existing infrastructure, as you see on the plan, north of Falmouth Road and South Falmouth, we're not proposing to do any improvements at this point here. As I said, this is sort of just trying to improve those connections and those links back to that A10 corridor. Okay.
Thanks, Peter. And then I think this might be one for you, Chris, which is a question here, which is how is it proposed that the funding for the A505 bridge will be secured? Is it being funded by GCP and Hearts? And are there any aspirational timescales for delivery of this? So 2 questions there.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So I think we've been sort of pretty open that at the moment we only have kind of the budget to effectively design the structure. So we are sort of actively seeking funds for the construction of that. We have put in an application to the Combined Authority for funding for the structure. So we're hopefully going to get an outcome of that later in the autumn. But potentially it might have an impact on kind of how we phase the delivery of the Melbourne Greenway. We have been talking to Hertfordshire. There's sort of little pockets of money that sort of various stakeholders and councils have sort of come up with, including sort of indication of kind of supporting the maintenance of a structure once it gets constructed. So there is a little bit of momentum, but yes, the big one is making sure we get the funding for the structure itself.
And in terms of, so, I mean, the question was just about, is there an aspirational timescale? I'm not sure if that's just for the bridge or for the whole. So
Yeah, I mean,
the question is, what's the timescale for delivery on the whole project?
yeah, I mean,
That's that
the
question.
whole project. So I think with a fair wind, we'd be looking to deliver some of the on-road elements where we don't need sort of planning permissions and the like. At some point in 2023, and the sort of the more complicated sections where we need sort of landowner agreements, where we might need going through private land, etc., where we're interfacing with public rights of way, that kind of thing. You know, the ambition is to still deliver everything by the end of 2025.
Thanks very much. At the moment, I don't see anyone else with their hand up. I don't see any more questions, and no one's put a question in the chat. So just while people, this is your chance to ask another question, but while you're thinking of something, Chris, would you just reiterate the dates of the 2 drop-in sessions and locations that are next week?
Yeah,
which will have the advantage. We'll have the advantage of being able to look at these maps in much more detail. These maps are also all available on the website, and you can then zoom in much more closely.
Absolutely. Yep. Right. So, yeah, bit more of a plug then of our event. So we've got so on Monday evening we're going to be at the Melbourne Hub. So Monday between 4 and 7 o'clock, and then we've got an event also next Thursday at the Hawkston Centre, again between 4 and 7 o'clock. And then do come along and spread the word, and we're happy to sort of have a chat through the designs, and it runs until midday on the 28th.
That's good, and we want to hear your views on this. There is a survey online which can be accessed by the GCP website. However, if the survey doesn't suit your purposes and you wish to make a particular point or a general point, or just send us an email, if you send us an email or comment online in any forum, that will also be considered as part of the engagement. We want to take the broadest number of views and feedback from local residents, people who live and work and use the area and will use the new greenways when they are constructed, so that we can deliver a good project. That's not generated any more questions or hands up or anything, so thank you very much to Peter and Chris for the presentation, and being no more questions, I will close the meeting then. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to hopefully to you being able to join us next week at the in-person events. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks
Good
all.
night.
I'll stop the recording now.